Alright then, so Destiny 2 has got extremely interesting news going on. The optics of what they're doing, which basically is saying, hey, do you want the dungeons? You gotta buy the deluxe edition. Those are some really rough optics. Now, there's a lot to get into here, but overall, the evolving story of Destiny 2, of Bungie, business model, and that question of, was it Activision Blizzard that was the problem all along? These are all things that are coming up now. It's also quite lucky that we have a long-time Destiny 2 man on our team on the game development side, so we've also ran everything through him to get a little bit more of like the active player's perspective. So to go into this then, what's actually happening is that, of course, new expansion's coming out next year. We talked about in our February Bloodbath video, and the dungeons won't be included with the expansion. You're just going to be buying the expansion, but you won't get the dungeons unless you get the deluxe edition. Now, Bungie technically did announce this back in August when they revealed the 3 editions of the expansion, the Standard, Deluxe, and Deluxe Plus. But it seems like this is a bit of a detail that slipped by unnoticed until the wording got picked up a few days ago and has caused a bit of an explosion within the Destiny community, because it certainly seems like they're just kind of salami slicing all the money they can possibly get, you know, chopping up all the little bits of the game and trying to get more money out of them. So a Bungie community manager went over to Reddit to try to clarify things, and, well, yeah. Hey everyone, we've seen some debate around the new dungeon content and wanted to clarify how it will be delivered next year. If you get the digital deluxe edition of The Witch Queen, you will receive the expansion, all 4 seasons for next year, and the 2 dungeons. If you get the standard edition, you can still upgrade to the deluxe edition to get the dungeons later. We'll be offering a separate way for you to purchase the dungeons in the future, but they will not be included in the season pass. Many downvotes.
I believe it was actually the most downvoted comment in all of Reddit for that day.
That's understandable, because if you look at this, what they're basically doing is they are stripping the dungeons out of the core expansion payment and out of the season pass so that they essentially are another thing that you buy. Now, they're obviously doing all of this to drive people into the $80 digital deluxe edition, right? They basically don't really want you buying the base. That's kind of what's going on. So as for what this means, well, number one, people are confused because this is just a very bizarre way to have your game go. I mean, the idea that you can get Witch Queen, you can get all the season passes, but you'll then have dungeons you can't do until you cough up more money, that feels weird. And then there's the sort of thing where if you're buying those dungeons separately, is that going to be more expensive overall? All of this stuff that is just really pretty iffy communication and a frankly bizarre as hell business model. Now, usually when there's a deluxe edition for a game, like, it might have some unique skins or a random little side mission or something. But a dungeon's a pretty core part of a game like Destiny. I mean, I even remember the dramas of the PlayStation editions getting an extra dungeon that the Xbox and PC ones wouldn't. And, that was frustrating to people. So, yeah, ouch. And then on the topic of monetizing dungeon content, there is also the 30th anniversary pack. It costs $25. It's got basically that big rocket launcher that I think is a sort of community meme favorite. New weapons, armor, much more, and a dungeon for $25. So that's also just like a dungeon and a bunch of stuff DLC. So this is all quite weird. I think we can understand how if you're a Destiny player and you have not been asked to pay for dungeons in this way, now you suddenly are and you're not going to feel good. So with both Forsaken and Shadowkeep, those launched with the dungeon content included. So this is just a new way of slicing it up for more money. And remember as well that all of this is happening in the wake of the news that Bungie will be vaulting the Forsaken content when Witch Queen launches. That's the other side here. They aggressively vault content. Now, there are reasons for the vaulting that do make sense from a game design reason, but fundamentally, you're saying to people, hey, you're going to pay more money for this overall expansion experience, and by the way, in 2 years, we're going to put that expansion in the vault and you won't be able to have it anymore. Now, that said, the core expansion, like story experience, is absolutely, usually a bit shit. in Destiny. That's not the point of the game. The point of the game is the more end game stuff. I mean, I remember doing the Shadowkeep story and being flabbergasted at just how cheap it was. So, you know, we can all see that going on and just see how that feels really weird to people. Not only do you have the sting of realizing that stuff you've paid for is going, but now they're asking for more money for the same thing. That's how it feels. And then, of course, people are thinking about paying all this money for Witch Queen and these dungeons, and then they're just thinking, oh, wait, what if that gets vaulted too? I mean, we both bought Forsaken, and now the thing we bought's gone. That said, the thing we bought's also no longer really relevant today, but that still is going to feel really, really, really weird to people. It's bizarre how they handle this stuff. And of course, the other side is that the Destiny, like, Eververse store is fucking egregious. Like, you think about a lot of games where fashion is the end game. That's really a lot harder to do in Destiny 2 because of just it's so tied into the monetization loop. So it's a weird thing. Now, it's also the case where Bungie, they've tried to justify how the Eververse store is the way that it is by saying that offering some amount of Eververse content for silver only is part of ensuring we're able to fund our ability to keep creating and maintaining Destiny and supporting the team that makes Destiny. So they're very much just saying, hey, Eververse, it pays for content, that's what's going on. But again, it's like, well, making the business model work is your problem. You have to make the business model work while also delivering a satisfying experience to players. So you can have all your justifications, but at the end of the day, they're irrelevant in the face of how they feel to a paying customer. As an outsider, it all seems insane. And I think that's why so much of the internet has picked up on this. Now, for clarity, me and Matt played actually quite a bit through Forsaken. But we hopped into Shadowkeep. The campaign was really lame, and I just found myself bouncing off it for whatever reason. Now, that said, from what I understand, the actual state of the video game to go and play, Destiny 2, is basically incredible right now. I continuously hear really good things, including that the value proposition, if you pretend Eververse doesn't exist, and you think about just the core content and the day-to-day gameplay experience, apparently it's a very good, value prop. So there's that to think about. Now, for somebody who is not an insider or not an outsider, we've got Skill Up. The top-rated post on r/games all today. Destiny has also been trending on Twitter all day. It's disappointing that the majority of the time that non-Destiny players hear about the game, it's stuff like this, or vaulting, or transmog, or whatever, instead of all the legitimately awesome stuff the game consistently produces. It bums me out to see everyone ragging the game because they are missing out on so much, but I don't blame anyone for completely noping out on Destiny when this is all they see and hear. And I suppose that's a lot of it. Destiny has got its captive audience. There's a bit of me that wonders if they've just found that it's really hard to grow that audience, and that instead the way that they keep this thing going is by deeper monetization of what they're doing anyway, rather than try to really push for user acquisition. Could just be the, new light and all of that. That's what we've got to play with. Now we just need to make good content and try to get as much money out of this as we can. It feels like that. And I suppose another thing that we picked up when we were going through all of this is some thoughts on the new player onboarding experience. So with what Skill Up is rightly pointing out there, that the overall PR for Destiny is really quite rough for non-Destiny players. And if you are a prospective new Destiny player, also things popping up about it being in a really rough state for new players. I mean, I do even remember when New Light came out. Decently confusing even then. Because, it's a game like this, right? It's every currency is some weird noun that you've not heard of before, and, it is all just confusing. But yeah, this one, I had two friends recently start playing, and they instantly stopped when they realized they had to pay almost $120 to play the whole game. That's the other side. And the mods. And I think that's the weird thing. They're basically trying to get a paid subscription model in terms of the overall revenue that they get from players. They're trying to get that without it actually being a subscription, which does mean that it's a bit like when you go onto some SaaS application and the last thing they want you to do is pay monthly because they want you to pay annually. This almost feels a bit more like getting Slack or Monday or Notion on an annual bill.
That's basically exactly what it is. Everything drives you towards annual. Everything drives you towards this because there's no other option. You can't just go, the best you can do is I'll grab the base expansion for $40 and then I'll get season passes. But free to play isn't so much as a good Destiny experience, as far as I can tell anyway, from, paying attention to player sentiment. It's less experience and more an advertisement for the full game in terms of how you get onboarded really poorly, really badly, and then it kind of goes, there's not really much for you to do. You've kind of got the base understanding of what the game is. Now throw your money at us, and then you can play the full thing, which is, I guess, is them hedging their bets on the gameplay feeling good, which it usually does. But like, it's the one thing that they talk about there is the mods. I'm a returning player, barely have half of them because the other half is practically unobtainable. That is a sentiment I saw quite a lot going through the subreddit, and it's just people saying, I've been playing this game for 300 hours, and I don't feel like I'm actually ready to hop into Crucible in terms of what I have available mod-wise. I don't have full sets for PvE or PvP, so I'm kind of feeling a little bit gimped versus, players who've got 1,000 hours, just because the acquisition rate is really quite poor.
Yeah.
In a way that it feels like almost like the worst cases of an MMO, where it's like, this is a really hyper grindy game to get ready for the experience versus just go into the experience and enjoy it as much as you can.
Yeah, it feels like it's all designed for you to be riding the crest of the wave with all of the players who are super up to date. But then if you are not there, it's a bit weird and confusing.
Yeah.
Like the end of this Reddit post is like, I think, a pretty good sentiment. I don't hate the game. I just wish it was more accepting of new players. It's extremely confusing. The price is huge. Past season items are lost. Unlocking things like new subclasses behind a paywall is, in my opinion, pay to win. That's all. So it's just the sorts of things where it's stuff that is just a big opportunity to make a paying customer or prospective player feel bad and confused. Which isn't exactly what we want to have happen. And I guess it's just, would it be more simple if it was basically the World of Warcraft model or the Final Fantasy XIV model of buy the expansion, pay the sub fee, there you go, it's an a la carte experience, that's that. I just think they probably know that in doing that, they would lose so many of their customers because of it being a sub.
I think that's the problem. They're trying to get the revenue from that without actually committing to it. And the way they're doing it just feels bad, because it's like, the value proposition isn't bad, realistically. At least, as far as I can tell, there's definitely some people saying there's not enough in the game, or there's, there are enough problems with the game that it's not worth it. Although that doesn't seem to be, that seems to be mixed sentiment as opposed to the actual running average. But I think in terms of new players, I have one of the worst anecdotes about it, because I tried to get back into it a couple months ago, I think, and it, as a returning player, it had normalized my power level to about 1,000, and then dropped me into a mission with no warning or no explanation. So I was lost on plot because I hadn't had a refresher. I couldn't remember who was talking to me or why. I didn't feel connected to the last time I played, and the recommended power for the mission was 1,050, which means that, not because of me playing badly, but because of the game systems, I couldn't fight toe-to-toe with any of the enemies because they would just kill me in one shot. And it's not, you can obviously dodge a lot of stuff in Destiny, but you do have to, pop your head out to hit something. So it just felt like they've really not paid any attention to what the new player or the returning player experience is literally like. And that's why I think you've got this problem of, we can't monetize new players, so we need to monetize existing players more. But how long until you push people out instead of getting the actual results?
Yeah, because people are going to feel like they need these dungeons. And if that's just going to mean that your average price is, a little bit more, then I'll just be sort of happy days. Because, the thing here is that, if you get the edition that has the game, the dungeons, season passes, all of that stuff just in one payment, and you play the game for the full year, it's probably going to be a really great value.
Yeah.
That's the thing with all of this, and that's why, it works for the more dedicated player of the game. It's just that the optics are weird, and people are not used to the content of a game being treated in this manner. So to move to the philosophical problem, by most accounts, Destiny 2 is a very good game indeed. It just has a lot of baggage. The people we've spoken to are largely happy with the game itself and the amount of content that they get, even in terms of how much they pay for that content. But it seems to be an optics issue on Bungie's end and how they treat D2 as a product. That said, there's also a ton of valid concerns about the game as well. But if you go to the Witch Queen Reddit thread is fucking brutal. And people always say, oh, it's the Redditors. And I actually do understand a fair bit of that. You can get a lot of echo chambering in Reddit, but you do want to look out for the people who are engaged enough in your game to spend their free time making posts about your game. Those are usually going to be some of the first people you'll hear when there's a problem that could sort of cascade outwards. And then there's the vaulting, which still feels weird to people. And it's kind of weird because we say, it's funny. World of Warcraft and FF14, they don't vault content, but in World of Warcraft, old content just becomes so irrelevant that it may as well be in a vault. Just sort of, do it for transmog or something, but it doesn't impact the sort of design and balance of the current endgame. Whereas Destiny kind of does have that problem with its older content. If it tries to bring it all up, then they have that issue where the game, they just keep on adding shit and adding shit and adding shit, and suddenly, you log in and your to-do list is like 500 items long. But it still feels really weird to people. Really, really weird to people. Now, there are some good things, like file size, being able to guide players, not having anachronistic content. So, you won't just go and do something that makes no sense to the story, or something that, made sense for the design of the game 3 years ago, but doesn't make sense anymore. So there are things like that, but philosophically to people, they're losing access to a thing they paid for, and that fucking sucks. Clearly. And it's not it's not like, oh, it'll be gone in 5 or 10 years. No, it's actually gone pretty damn soon. Now, one of the problems here is there's a clear solve, like with the Vault of Glass, where you can put old content in the Legends tab or a new Legacy menu option. You could do any of those things, and maybe, depending on how things are architected, you could have that be an optional download.
I think that's where I find this the most interesting, because what they kind of intend to do with the vault, and are very open about this, is they won't bring back old content, just go, here it is, wheeled out as it was. They're like, okay, we're throwing this content in the bin, but we've kept the ideas, so we are going to remaster it at some point, or not, well, not are, but we can. We can remaster this at some point, and then you'll enjoy the experience from there, but we've put the effort into making it modern, as opposed to just, we've left it in the game, bloated your file size. The data says no one's playing it anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's a kind of thing where it's the philosophical angle of people going, no, that's my content. I don't want to play it, but what if I do? And you're like, that's where the problem comes in, really.
It basically means that whenever you are buying Destiny 2 content, view it as if you are buying a season pass to a theme park. You don't own any of the shit in that theme park. They can change the rides in and out. And that is very different to how people experience ownership of a game that they purchase. That at one point may have even came in a disc, right? Like that, it's just weird feeling. Now, there is the thing where, if you are on the crest of that wave and you're just playing all of the latest content, doing the latest season stuff, then there's a decent chance that, the vaulting doesn't impact you in a negative way, and perhaps only could be positive. It's just that it feels really weird and wrong. And then their monetization model, it's awful for optics. It's just awful for optics.
Yeah.
What else can we say? Even with it being priced like this, I am sure that for, as I said, the crest of the wave people, it's a great value and going to be a great gameplay experience. But my God, the optics are awful. It feels greedy, feels like a load of bullshit, especially when, if you do this, you also have the Eververse store being that, and you kind of really make Fashion Destiny be a money thing. Well, that obviously sucks.
Yeah, it's weird because the way that the Digital Deluxe Edition previously, as far as I'm aware, the Digital Deluxe Edition hasn't gone up in price to accommodate dungeons. It just is the same as always, but it also includes the dungeons. So you're and they're going to sell them separately at another point, but the season passes are all the same price. So it feels like the Digital Deluxe Edition is getting the dungeons thrown in for free. And you're like, okay, well that's okay, but the philosophical side of that is, so I can't just choose when to buy them without paying more? What are you doing? And it's that idea of just, you've set this new precedent of dungeons are now extra content you buy.
Yeah,
and
they've moved them up in edition instead of being base.
Yeah, and what other game has done that? What other game, even in the modern world, has went, here's content that's literally a design bit of content that will have a bunch of rewards. It's behind a paywall. Whenever there are, I know it's not the same game, but people often compare Destiny 2 to Warframe.
I can understand that.
Okay, well, you're setting a new precedent for greed. Philosophically speaking, even if content-wise it's not a massive problem, it just looks like one and smells like one to everyone who's watching.
Yeah, and it's just in line with Bungie doing things that have seemed, from an outsider's perspective, to be odd. And all that's just going to be continually damaging to how they're seen, and certainly damaging to their user acquisition. So there you go. It's that weird thing where, look, if you are there for the gameplay, even with this, Destiny's probably still a great gameplay experience. But my God, does this feel horrible. And that basically, well, that's that. That's the situation. That's really it for us. There's not too much else that we can add. Not the optics you want when really you're trying to hype up and sell your big new expansion and get your community, you know, happy around it. This is just connecting a whole ball of negativity to what should, for the Destiny players, be a big exciting thing. And that is, it's a big shame for the players because it will tarnish their experience of the game because there'll be that negativity surrounding it. You know, obviously sucks for the company for obvious reasons. And yeah, I mean, it just seems like a lose-lose unless it makes them more money. In which case, it's a loss for all parts of Bungie other than the financial bit. So there we go. That's it. Hope you found that interesting anyway. Of course, let us know if you're a little bit deeper into D2 what your thoughts are. And with that said, we'll see you next time.